Yo, what's up, everybody? It is Tuesday night. You know what it is. It's your boys, Dales, Maddie. We got Pove down below. It's Flyers Talk A2D. We're talking Cam York's contract extension tonight. What does it mean for the Flyers moving forward the rest of the offseason? We're also going to break down a little bit more of that offseason that we started last week. Since Maddie was not here, we want to get his take on the signings, the draft, all that other fun stuff. We're going to also give our grades for what the Flyers did this offseason as well. So make sure you hit that like, hit that subscribe. Make sure you jump in the chat. It's time to get the conversation started. Let's get it.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of Flyers Talk A2D right here on A2DRadio.com. I am Matt Sitsuti along with the Darkwing, Brian Daly.
What up?
The Broken One, Rob Povia.
Hope everyone had an awesome 4th of July.
Yes. And we are brought to you by Specialized Physical Therapy. If you got any aches and pains that are just bugging you, causing you no end of grief, go hit up the doc, Dr. Paul Vidal, over at SpecializedPhysicalTherapy.com. Make an appointment to head either to Burlington or Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And after a few sessions with them, then you'll feel pretty good about yourself at the end of the day. Not only will you be feeling so much better, you'll be back to doing the things you love without having to deal with nagging pain. Wouldn't that be a relief, right? Specialized Physical Therapy. That's where you got to go. And the poll question for today, the Flyers re-signing of Cam York will be the last big move of the off-season. Agree or disagree? Obviously, if you've been keeping up on your Flyers news lately, the Flyers have made a few signings. Not necessarily massive ones, but ones more for depth reasons. And this one was kind of a big one that needed to be taken care of. Obviously, we had debated this a few weeks ago about what kind of deal should Cam York be offered, what kind of deal should they put out on the table for him. But now we officially have a 5-year deal for Cam York that has been signed, sealed, and delivered. He will be wearing the orange and black for the foreseeable future. So now, gentlemen, before we get into our opinion of keeping Cam York for the length of time and for the amount of money, do you agree or disagree that this is the last big move that Danny B will make during this offseason?
I think it's going to be. I think they're done for the. I think they're done for the offseason unless something really wow pops up, and it's like one of those moves that it's like, oh, we got to jump on this while we can. I don't necessarily know if anything else is going to happen. I mean, I said it before, I'll say it again. I was not a big fan of this this UFA class. I will continue to not be a fan of this UFA class until the season starts. If they're going to make any other moves, it's going to be an RFA move. There are rumors, and I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on rumors that the Flyers are linked to Mason McTavish now of the Anaheim Ducks. He's got some issues with the front office and his playing time for the Ducks. So yeah.
Brian, do you just want to swap teams at this point? I mean, we
No.
already have two
right?
Ducks that have come over. So,
I mean, I'll take Mitchkov. I'm just putting that out there.
okay, you know what? Never mind. We're gonna nip that in the bud now.
But that's just rumor, so I'm gonna take that with a grain of salt. So we'll see what happens. But I don't necessarily think there's anybody else that the Flyers really need to go after. We talked about it last week. That absolutely, got to let some of these young guys take some of these roles as well. So that's my big thing is figuring out ways, because Alex Bump had a great developmental camp. In fact, he was just amazing. He was on a whole nother level than anybody else. Apparently, Porter Mortone had a great developmental camp. Jack Nesbitt had a great camp. So it's a lot to be excited about. and you don't really want to log jam these guys up for too long. I don't expect Nesbitt to really make the roster. Mortone is up in the air. He may wind up in Penn State with Gavin McKenna. So there's still some pieces that need to be figured out, but I think they need to be figured out internally. So I'm going to agree to the poll. I think re-signing Cam York, which is a necessary move, and I'll talk a little bit more about the perks of the contract in a little bit once we get through the poll. But I think it was necessary, and I think they're done for the offseason.
Okay. I'll jump in here. I think that I would hesitate to say that they're done, and the reason why is like, as a big move wise, maybe I could agree to that to an extent, but I think in general, I would hesitate to say that. I think that there's still room for them to make minor adjustments here and there. As for big moves, unless it's a trade, that has some moving parts to it with some adjustments for salaries and what have you, I would say that'd be the only big move left to do in the offseason is to pull one off there. But I don't think that's very likely. So I think that it would probably be big moves. Yes, I agree. For minor moves, I would disagree. I think that minor wise, there could still be some little add ons here and there, or maybe a minor trade here and there.
I had to go hunting for a spider real quick.
Ooh, fun.
They're hot too. They're trying to get cool.
I'm pretty sure one bit me last night, and it's just right above my one eye here, and hopefully my glasses are kind of blocking it. So
hopefully it's not swelling up like a balloon.
No, I think I actually was able to get a jump on that. So
good.
It's just falling apart, guys.
I mean, it could be worse. You could be in Australia where they have nothing but giant spiders. So,
Yeah. Ones that'll mug you in the street.
Right. And then not only take your wallet, they might take your life too on top of it. Mm-hmm. Anyway. So, Robbie, how do you feel, man? Do you agree or disagree with this being the last big move for the offseason for the Flyers?
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely the last big move. It's the last piece. We listed off players that we expected this team to potentially extend a qualifying offer or an extension, and Cam York was right at the top of that list. That list did include Jacob Pelletier, Elliot Desnoyers, and Zayd Wisdom, too. Some past draft picks and who you acquired in the Kuzmenko deal, and they weren't extended qualifying offers, so that pretty much stated the Flyers' intentions pretty clearly at that point, where they're willing to let them negotiate with other teams. Cam York was at the top of the list. Once I feel that you brought Zegras in, and there's that camaraderie as well as the potentiality that we discussed. I feel as a whole this offseason, they've spent their available cap money wisely. And now at this point, it's time to ride into training and rookie camps coming off this development camp that Brian was talking about. So unless a major jolt to the roster, such as a big-time injury or an off-the-ice issue, this group will be the group that competes for the available spots in the upcoming Rick Tocchet training camp.
Yeah. Interesting. Joe is saying that the Flyers should just save money for next year because the UFA pool is stacked. He also goes on to say that the Flyers signed Connor McDavid to an 8-year, $136 million contract next year.
Nope.
I don't know about that one, Joe. I mean, don't get me wrong. Would that be awesome? That would be awesome. Will it happen? Are you okay? I just want to know, are you all right, Joe? Is everything okay? Are you cool? Because that's a little crazy to be start talking about that. But,
Call me crazy. I'd rather have Krill the Thrill than Connor McDavid. But, I mean.
It'd be interesting. You think?
Crazy.
I mean.
Yeah, right? Isn't it?
I mean, I will say this. If you put like Michkov and Karel like on a line, I think being Russians, they might actually have something going with that. You know, you might actually have a bit of an advantage if they were working together. Not to say though but here's the thing though, that is with Connor McDavid, he does elevate the play of everybody around him, which is why you could argue that he is the better of the two between him and Matthews. You could argue that since he has elevated the play of the guys he's played on lines with, not just Draisaitl, even though Draisaitl is the most talented German player that's come into the league.
My man's got to be 30 years old.
That's the problem.
Yeah, as an unrestricted free agent. I mean, but that's still, I mean, if he's expecting like that 8 to 10 year, he's going to burn some team. But if you could get him on a 5-year really pricey deal, which it seems to be the MO of this organization, working out like, lower years, maybe higher yearly AAV, that could be enticing to get maybe the tail end, but certainly a good piece of Connor McDavid in his prime. I'm on board. No. I don't think it'll ever happen, but I'm on board.
No, for sure. And that's the reports that are out right now, though, too, Robbie, is that he only wants a short-term deal. He doesn't want the max. But also at the end, you got to think about it too, is if he's gonna sign and he wants a long-term deal, he wants the 8-year max, he's got to do it this year, because come next year, with the new CBA, the max contract is going to be 7, so they're taking a year off. So if he wants the 8-year deal, he's got to do it now, which I don't think he does anyway.
I mean, so I'll ask this, and then we'll get back to Cam York. But for off-topic, quick conversation here. Do you see Cam York doing something like, so comparing just with Gretzky in terms of movement, do you see him just, instead of getting traded by Edmonton like Gretzky did, do you see him making a move to a team that would be kind of crazy to see them with a Connor McDavid, like say Utah or something like that? Whereas it was crazy back when LA got Gretzky. I mean, it was a big deal because it expanded hockey, but at the same time, I don't think anyone in their right mind back then would have thought that Gretzky would have been traded from Edmonton to, of all teams, to LA. So do you see that being a possibility where McDavid could go to a team like, say, Utah, or go to a team like, just for the craziness, could you imagine if he goes to Dallas, or if he goes to, I mean, that'd be tough because or man, could you imagine if he winds up in Colorado with the way that the offense runs there? I mean, it's just like, do you see him going to a Western team, or do you see him coming east? Like, what, like, just in your, get the magic ball out. Probably won't be accurate, but give it a shot. What do you think?
Honestly, I think he just winds up in one other spot. If he doesn't stay in Edmonton, I think he finds his way to Toronto. They're going to definitely have the spot for him, because Lord knows where Austin Matthews is going to be in the next year or two. I mean, Tavares signed a very team-friendly deal. Marner's off the books. Nylander, I'm not sure what his contract looks like right now, but I still think he has a couple years left on it. It all depends on how it shakes out in the next year. I'm sure they're going to figure it out, but Toronto just makes too much sense, in my opinion. He could wind up in the Rangers organization too, but I don't think the Rangers are going to have the cap space to do it. It's crazy, but yeah, I think Toronto's the team that winds up with him if he goes anywhere.
Could you imagine that? Even if Austin Matthews was gone, be like, wow, so they literally ended the Matthews era and they started a Connor McDavid era. I mean, if they still win nothing at the end of the day, I guess it doesn't really matter. But the fact that you would have had the two biggest players of the generation at one point in your jersey, I don't think any team could have imagined that. Like, imagine if, like, LA or Edmonton, or, God, imagine if Pittsburgh or the Rangers, even worse. Imagine if they had both Gretzky at one point and Mario Lemieux. Like, imagine that insanity right there. That's the equivalent of Toronto pulling that off.
Yeah.
But anyway, Joe's saying fine 4 years, $68 million. That's what he's saying for that contract. Feet on land saying McDavid would be God in Philly. He would be. He would be, actually. You are correct in that.
He'd be
You would nearly go from
from
McJesus to McGod.
Yes, he would have been promoted.
Gosh, can you imagine him going from one insanely talented German superstar to a younger Russian superstar?
Stop it. Listen.
Oh man, he's getting excited.
This is a family show. This is a family show. We're gonna.
Oh no!
Pretty soon we're gonna have a Randy situation from South Park.
Oh, it was a ghost. Protoplasm.
All right, so back to actually, I didn't ask
episodes.
I didn't ask you, Robbie. Briss saying Maddie after dark. Robbie, to throw this out to you, brother, what do you think about that? With the question, like, where do you see Connor McDavid migrating towards if he's out of Edmonton?
If he's out of Edmonton, I think there's two likely destinations. Brian touched upon one, and that's the blue shirts of Broadway, because that would be a good fit in a major market. That would have dollars and cents to pay. But if you're not on the East Coast, then maybe you're on the West Coast. And he literally follows and trolls Gretzky and goes from Edmonton to LA.
Oh man,
that would be crazy. I mean, hey, wouldn't it be even better if Edmonton and LA inevitably clash in the playoffs again, and this time finally LA actually beats Edmonton this time around, just to pour salt into the wound? That would be epic. I kind of actually want that to happen.
Soul.
Well,
Right.
I mean,
I didn't mean to, Brian.
I mean,
it's bad enough they already have Corey Perry. Now you're going to give him Connor McDavid? Like,
still, though, Corey Perry's kind of like a curse now. He's lost 5 straight Stanley Cup finals.
Yeah, but that guarantees LA's going to the Cup this year.
But it's okay. They're not going to win. They're going to lose to Florida. So there you go. Problem solved.
Probably.
Anyway, Swoopy's saying Rangers if McDavid's going anywhere.
I think it's got to be a major market, though. I don't know if he pulls the Nikolai Ehlers move and says he wants to go to a quieter market. He's a spotlight guy. He's got to go to a major market.
Wouldn't mind seeing the Rangers overpay for a mid-30s McDavid in 2030. Anyway, so gentlemen, back to Cam York. I think we all gave our agree and disagree on that. So I did star some comments. We'll get to those in a little bit, guys. So if we didn't read your comments, don't worry, we'll get to them. So as for McDavid, for Cam York's re-signing, still a little excited. Sorry, still gotta calm down. Cam York, the deal that he made, 5 years. How do you guys feel about this deal from Danny? Do you feel like that this was a little bit of GM magic from him, or do you feel that this is the right kind of deal for the team right now and for Cam York himself? Or do you think that Cam York got overpaid, or do you think the team underpaid him? Like, how do you guys feel about the York contract?
I think it's great on both sides. For the Flyers win because you're not sinking a large amount AAV, 5.15 per year. That's not a lot of money for what Cam York can bring for your team when his game is on, both offensively as well as obviously defensively. And then you give the player a 5-year security. That's a little bit more than just a bridge deal. That's an opportunity to cement yourself in Philadelphia, a place that he's quoted as saying he loves to be at, loves to be a part of the atmosphere of the fan base. And that's paraphrasing his quote, of course. And I get this immense sense that this kid's hungry and he's ready to prove something. And he's got that chip on the shoulder and he's ready to say, fuck you, Torts. Let's go.
Yeah.
And you know what? You know who's the biggest fan of that? John Tortorella.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, because he loves it when players, you know, will prove themselves despite him, because then he taught the lesson, right? And I think part of making a statement like, oh, I don't know how to coach these guys, and York, you know, you'll be benched, you know, if you're back here or what have you, right? It's all challenges, and to see what kind of intestinal fortitude these young kids have. Are they a part of the future of this team, or aren't they? Because it's time to put up or shut up at this point.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
no, for sure. I'm with you 100%, Robbie, and I agree with you 100%. I think this is great for both teams. You're getting a little bit more than a prove-it deal for Cam York. I know there's a lot of people that wanted him traded, and I kept telling people that he's probably going to resign. They're going to give him his opportunity. He's in a much better coaching situation than he was under Torts. The kid has yet to hit his prime age, so he's still learning. Having Tockett and why am I blanking on his name? Who's the assistant coach you just hired? Todd.
Talking about Yogi or
no,
no.
Todd. I'm blanking on his name, but one of the newer assistant coaches they brought in who plays has a very good defensive mind. You know, these are guys that can help.
Todd Reardon.
Todd Reardon, yes. Thank you, Maddie. These are guys that can help him get to that next level. I think Torts only got him so far, and I think Cam was definitely over Torts by the time he was done. And obviously, you know, they had their two blowouts, but so if he doesn't pan out in the next year or two in this contract, it's a very movable contract as well. So it's not one of those contracts that's really going to hand tie the Flyers to Cam York for the next 5 years. They can move him if it winds up not being an ideal fit in the next year or two. So that's one of the upsides to this deal as well is you know, the ability to, if you want to move on from him, he's not a fit, so be it. It's a movable contract, but I mean, he wants to be here. He loves the city. He loves playing for the Flyers. I think this kid takes a massive step forward next year, and I definitely think we see an improvement because we're going to see these guys let him play his game and let him really get off the leash and be a little more creative with where he is.
Right, and one more thing too, as some of these young kids start to move up the pipeline that we just drafted, you drafted a whole lot of size on that blue line. So I think as you get more body weight around players like a Cam York, like a Jamie Drysdale, that just allows them to range freer while they have that stay-at-homer with them and really exemplify what they're capable of on the ice.
So I decided to look it up just for the hell of it, and because I thought Todd Reardon's name sounded familiar, I was like, wait a minute, he played, didn't he? And yeah, he did apparently. I didn't realize this. He used to be a Thrasher.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he played for the Thrashers in the 01-02 season. He played like 65 games, and he was a whopping -25 on the ice.
Hey. Maybe he's getting this assistant coaching job as a springboard, as when we had Ryan Clifford on the draft special, Brian, remember he's talking about Atlanta. There's rumblings for another opportunity for an expansion hockey team. You know, maybe that boy wants to be the head man over there.
Oh, God. I think the worst thing they could do is put another team there.
You watch, though. You guys watch. They pull another team, third time's a charm. Watch it happen. That team will be a success, and they'll win the freaking cup. They'll win it, and we're all going to be sitting there. It's like, how in the living mother of cunt fuck did they actually pull this off?
Well,
they actually managed to get a team to be successful in Atlanta.
Well,
like, holy shit.
What's nice is from the rumors, and we talked about this a little bit on draft night, Maddie, apparently the team's going to be just outside of Atlanta, so it's going to not be in the city, so it's going to hit a little bit more of a major market. I also saw John Malmos's comment. I'm not exactly seeing any cap issues right now.
He also said he doesn't want an Atlanta team,
Right.
as you could
Oh,
tell
yeah,
from
I don't
the.
want an Atlanta team
I-
either.
Well, they're
As you could
pretty
tell
up
from
against
that.
it at this point now after this Cam York signing, John. You're certainly,
Mhm.
but don't forget that cap's going to continuously increase over the next 2 off seasons as it makes up from the, I think, right, the next 2 or just next year?
2 years, I believe.
In 2 years.
I believe.
Oh, so it skips a year, not next year, but in 2 years.
Yeah.
There's 2 springboards. There's the right what they got this year, and then in 2 years.
And then in 2 years, it goes up to about 120, I believe.
Well, that's when we're talking, right? We're talking potential McDavid, or I've talked about Hughes from Vancouver reuniting with Taka here in Philly, because that's when he'll be a free agent 2 years from now. So then, not now, build from within now, as I talked with Swoopy, and that's why you saw, to Maddie's point, as he brought us in, that a lot of deals were just solidifying the depth, getting extra guys that you could play at both the NHL level and the AHL level too. You got to field a team with the Phantoms, right? So you got guys coming in that could potentially play center iceman, like Peterson that we got from ex-Oiler, can play center ice there for the Phantoms, because I don't think Jet's not old enough to play for the Phantoms. So he's either got to return the juniors or make this NHL team. And once he makes the NHL team, okay, then you can go down in the Phantoms. But in the meantime, you need depth, and you need depth up the middle. And that's what we saw with a lot of those deals, Maddie.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, that's the thing. Like, I think what Danny's trying to do is he understands that the team that he has is relatively young. A lot of those players coming into entry-level deals. When those entry-level deals come up, he's got to make those tough decisions. And the last thing he wants to do is to run into cap issues. Because what if, you get guys that all of a sudden are just blossoming into these really great players. It's like the last thing you want to do is to be paying veterans who are not necessarily holding or pulling their weight, and you can't afford to keep your young guys around. That would be the worst thing that could possibly happen. I'm not saying that, and it happens to all teams. Obviously, it happened to Tampa. They had all these great players in spades, and then eventually they all had to go their separate ways because of cap issues. But the last thing the Flyers want to do is to self-make those cap issues and shoot themselves in the foot before they even have a shot at getting to that level. So I see what Danny's doing. He's being smart enough to realize that we can't go and make big splashes. We have to add on here and there, and we have to keep the young guys under contract, especially the ones that we feel are going to be worth the time and the effort at the end of the day.
Yep.
And they dibble-dabble. I mean, getting Trevor Zegras, that could potentially be a big splash. So I like the fine line going back and forth here as they look to make the next step in the rebuild, Maddie.
Right. John saying stink, not think. Meanwhile, Me Metal Mike saying Oklahoma City was another market Gary Bettman spoke about, another market. That would be interesting to see an Oklahoma City team. They already have an AHL squad, or they did. I don't know if they're still there. But anyway, overall, for my opinion, the Cam York deal is fine. I think, again, it's just making sure that we have the young players that we want to have are still here. We're not desperately fumbling around trying to figure out where the hell we're trying to, how are we going to rob Peter to pay Paul for this young guy? We're trying to keep everything solidified and nailed down, because who knows? At the end of the day, it could be one of those things where you can move on from a player or two. You have some cap space available, and when the time is right, then you make your big move. Right now, the Flyers they're kind of fine with, not necessarily needing to make that big move. And I'm okay with it. I think that's as I've said many, many times, it's the biggest mistake the Flyers regimes of old have made. They will always be so focused on those big splashes, and they would just bite the Flyers in the ass. Even if they were successful for a very short period, it wasn't good enough to win the cup. And then you ran into those financial problems later on. So I'm fine with it. Maintain the young guys, keep them here, keep them developing, keep them growing. add on here and there as you can to make sure that the team has some solidification to it. But I'm okay with it. I'm fine with the deal.
Yeah, like I said, I'm good with it. So it's, again, like to everybody's point, I think it fits what they're trying to do. You're not spending an arm and a leg, like you so eloquently said. You're not robbing Peter to
Pay Paul.
Peter to pay Paul. Nice solid salary number. Contract that's movable should he not turn into the player that we think he's going to be. But I still think he's a top 4 defenseman. I know some people will disagree with me, Heather. But I think we see a step forward with this entire team next year with where this coaching staff is and with where the team is and where the mentality of this team is. He even said that he loves wearing the crest of the team and that the culture of the team is different. Even Porter Martone, who just got here, sees it. Right. So, everybody, there's just this huge positive culture in this locker room. It's hard for me to think that this team isn't going to take the next step. And guys like Cam York aren't going to be a huge part of this team taking the next step. We just have to we just need the guys to play their role. We need the guys to buy into the system, and we need these guys to just do their part.
And to think he turns out to be this really amazing player that we think he can be. That'd be like the one good thing Chuck Fletcher did the entire time he was here in Philly.
As other pieces from the Chuck Fletcher era get shed by Danny B and Keith Jones and company. But yeah, I expected this to get done for sure, because you let him walk like you've let other players walk in the past, or worse off, trade for pennies on the dollar, like a Shane Gostisbehere who comes back and plays a really solid game for many other NHL teams. Lastly, Carolina, Cam York would fit that ilk. He would haunt you, right? So I think you've got to give him an opportunity with this. It's an opportunity that can go either way, and the sky's the limit.
Absolutely. So real quick, Maddie, before you take back over here, I just want to go over some things real quick. Sure. So I just pulled up, and Quinn Hughes' very short NHL career, always known to be a playmaker style, can play on the back end. So before Rick Tocchet took over, 68 games he played, wound up with 53 points and a -10. The following year, 3 goals, 38 assists, 41 points, net -24. The year after that, 8 goals, 68 assists for 68 points, which I think this was when Tocchet took over in the second half of the year. So I think that was the end of the Bruce Boudreau. And then Tocchet takes over. His numbers start to climb a little bit higher. 7 goals, 69 points, 76 or 69 assists, 76 points, +15. 2 years ago, 75 assists, 92 points, +38. Last year, his numbers were a little down, but he still had a phenomenal year. He had 16 goals, 60 assists for 76 points. So just it goes to show you that, Tocchet knows how to get the best out of his players, especially when it's somebody that they want to, somebody they really like, somebody who really respects him as a coach, and somebody who buys into the system. It shows you the importance of what that means for a player.
Yeah. It is very important, and it's necessary for a young player's growth. Swoopy saying, when they are ready to make big moves, don't feel forced to make free agent additions just because they're the ones available. That is true. Don't just, bank on the name. Focus on where you think that how they're going to fit into your team. And to swing that back over, good opportunity for us to transition at some of the starred comments that I have here. Don't worry, Swoopy, your large comment is a part of that. And starting off, me Metal Mike saying, thoughts on getting Darth Vladar. I do like that.
I love it. I honestly believe that Dan Vladar is going to be a really good option at goaltender this year. That's going to take a lot of pressure off of Sam Ersson because I know people, again, Heather, Ivan Fedotov just showed that he's a guy. I think he's going to spend a lot of time in the AHL next year. I think that between him and whoever else is down there with him, I don't even know who's going to be down there with him. But, I mean, Vladar showed that he can be a starter in the NHL. I think he's going to eventually get to the point where he takes time away from Ersson. But Ersson's going to be good enough that he's going to be able to stick around. We know that he's a platoon goalie. Having a guy like Dan Vladar, I think, is only going to take the pressure off of him, so he's going to play a little bit more of a relaxed game. I feel like he had to step up and play a little bit better to kind of help compensate for not getting the best play out of Kolosov, not getting the best play or not consistent enough play out of Fedotov. So I think having a steady guy back there, which is we got the best out of Sam Ersson when Carter Hart was here. I think having Dan Vladar here is going to do the same thing. And I think that's actually going to improve this team vastly because, let's be real, there were a few games that they probably should have won that goaltending did wind up being the reason why they lost. So I think this definitely helps the team moving forward.
Yeah. Robbie, how do you feel?
I think so. Yeah, I think so, Maddie. I think he gives you less of a drop-off when you're not starting Ersson, right? To where you can have guys with similar toolboxes that can give you similar production in tandem, and thus you have steady play between the pipes. I think they paid way too much, but the market dictated that because it was thin as was. And then when you saw Caden Primo go, it was you were gonna drastically overpay for the name of Jake Allen. I like who did Montreal just sign? They signed Jacob Dobbs. Is that correct?
Was it? I forget who they just signed, honestly. Let's see.
Yeah. Jakob Dobbs, I believe, just signed with Montreal. So that could have been an alternate way to go. Yeah, 2-year contract. 2 years, $1.93 million contract. So got a cheaper deal there. That's why, see, that would have been a little bit where you could have spent a little less money. But also there's a drop off there too. So, I mean, you could have went either way, but you talk about Vladar. He's had one season where he's had a plus 900 save percentage, but that was 2 years ago, right? And he's coming off, I believe, a season high in appearances. It was Dobbs. Thanks, Bruce. Where he came off a career high in appearances, so he could be just hitting stride too. And I'm telling you, you could have two blue collar guys that play well in tandem with a better defense being played in front of them, which will help, but also give you those games, to your point, Brian, where your goaltender lost the game where you had to drop off to a Fedotov or a Koloslov. And that way this team can stay relevant for the playoffs, gain that experience, and really stem the tide and bridge the gap till some of our younger talent pool is ready to come up from the AHL level.
So let's see here. We're going to go to Cavalcade Ellis, who says, realistically, how do you think the Flyers will do this year? I am a hockey casual, by the way, so I don't know much about the sport as of right now. Well, no problem, Ellis. We're more than happy to answer that. So realistically speaking, I would say the Flyers will be a team that's either going to finish a little low in the standings. At worst, at best, they will be a bubble team, but a bubble team with a slight chance of the playoffs. I'm not going to say a very high chance. It's a slim one. Not out of the realm of possibilities if they get going in the right direction, but I would say it is more along the lines of bubble miss or lower standings. That's where I'm looking at the Flyers realistically going into this year.
Right. And I mean, you got to also see how does this team interact with Rick Tocchet? Is there a slow learning curve? right?
Right.
They could, we're going to see that at camp real soon, real quick, right? And then as you go into the season, what kind of start did they get off of? Is there a seamless transition where they're able to take that next step with a new hire in place, or they're growing pains? So I feel that Tocchet and the relationships that he's had with some of these players, right, will play dividends, as well as the assistants that he hired for this team. And I think they do get off to a good start. And I do believe they fight for a wild card this season and gain that key experience, because I want this team to make the playoffs and get their ass handed to them, because that's going to be such a great learning life lesson,
No,
Okay.
I agree. I see this team definitely being better than last year. You brought up a great point in that second comment you left there, bud. They definitely did look better. They looked more relaxed. They felt like they played more their game, and I think we're going to continue to see more of that. I think Tocchet is going to allow these guys to play their style. I think he's going to allow them to kind of be on a leash, but be able to kind of do what Bradshaw let them do, and it's just kind of still play their game to an extent while trying to keep some kind of a structure. I think with the offseason that they had this year, some of the guys that they brought in, I definitely think they've improved. I like the Christian Dvorak signing. I think that makes them better defensively, especially at center in the bottom six. I think this team, I'm with you, Robbie. I think this team is going to battle for a wild card. I think you got a really good goalie tandem now. I think if the defensemen can figure out their woes from last year and kind of take what they did well last year and carry it into this year, I think we see a much different team, a much more fun team than we did last year. And I think, again, I think they just fall just short of the wild card, but I do think they find themselves in a wild card spot for at least the majority of the season.
All right, then. So hopefully that answered your question there, Ellis. And welcome to the fam, brother.
Hit that sub. If you want to learn more and you want to be a little less of a casual, hit that sub. We just come in, we have a conversation. It's not about being right or wrong. We come in, we have a conversation, brother.
Right. Because who knows? Hockey is a very fun and also kind of unpredictable sport. You never really know what's going to happen. I mean, let's be honest. It really hit me after Florida repeated that in the 2020s, a Florida team has represented the East the entire decade so far, which is kind of shocking when you really think about where those two teams came from. Anyway, so let's see here. Pris saying Fowler is coming to Montreal. God, he's going to be a monster. No doubt about that. Apparently.
I don't know if he means Cam Fowler, but
yeah.
He's still got another Uranus contract anyway, so I'd be surprised if he goes to Montreal.
He said, great reel on its way in a few days after
this.
You damn
right.
Guys. Nice.
You damn right there, Swoopy.
And so let's see here. Next on the starred comments, we have... Yeah. So let's see. Next on the comments from Swoopy, a player for player bride, trade a player who doesn't have the style to play the line system needed and intended for a player who does provide the skills to play the system intended. That was one of Swoopy's comments. And let me just double check here because I think I missed his super long one. Here it is. As I said last week, just because players are available in free agency, don't feel forced to sign any. If it's one next year who fits, then do it. But don't feel forced to sign more than one. Be creative at finding guys who are truly a fit, not just guys who are free agents. If it's one next year, then nobody else. Then one the following year, do that. Not all in one offseason just because. Okay. Robbie here, Robbie gone.
Now Robbie's here. Now Robbie's gone. No, Priz, I'm not high enough for this either. And
I like reading his insights, though, man. This is obviously a kid that understands the game of hockey, and he makes solid points. I mean, idealistically, in a perfect vacuum, this is how you want it to go. But sometimes it could be circuitous routes to the same destination.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the also the challenge is too is like, as the player that you want, Heather, by the way, agrees with your swoopy. Um, the player that you want sometimes, they're a free agent. You know that the possibility could be there of landing him, but the problem is it's like as good a fit as he could be, something happens. It's just it's unexpected. I mean, there's plenty of times where the Flyers were in on players and they chose to sign somewhere else. I mean, there what I found out was funny this past season, and I didn't realize it, that apparently, did you guys know that back when Ray Bourque was leaving Boston, there was a possibility he was going to sign with Philadelphia, and then at the last minute he signed with Colorado?
Mm-hmm. It's crazy
That's
to think about, isn't it?
It is
Wayne
crazy to think
Gretzky,
about.
Wayne Gretzky was almost a Flyer as well.
Right.
That I knew.
It's crazy to think about just how close the Flyers were to landing some historically amazing, iconic players, and that goes for modern day too. I mean, there's a lot of guys that the Flyers have tried to get a grasp on, and the only thing you can do is you can try. You can try. It's a good fit. If it doesn't work out, you move forward. But at the same time, I don't disagree. I think that it's absolutely understandable where that line of thinking is. And like you said, Robbie, in a perfect world, that would be the case. Unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world, sadly.
Damn it, why not?
I know, right? Jeez. Swoopy did say, I have a lot to say when I say something. I hate typing because I have a lot to say. That's why I want to be live. Hey, listen, there's nothing wrong with being live, man. Live and untamed. So,
yeah. I'm just excited for the potentiality of York taking that next step. I mean, and really be that captain on the power play that we know this kid can be, as well as there's too many times where he got beat bad. Like caught slow, flat-footed, right? And that's what's going to get the ear of a coach like Torts, right? But I want to see him. That's where you're going to see max effort. I really foresee that, because to prove the naysayers wrong, right, Matt?
Right. Of course, you always want to prove the naysayers wrong, and York definitely has a lot of them that came from this past season. And this is a chance for him to prove them wrong, to show that, no, you guys have no idea. You don't even have the slightest idea of how good I am. And I'm about to show you.
Mm-hmm.
And I want him to show. I want him to prove everybody wrong.
I
want Torch to be sitting in his house, his probably very lovely house. I want him to sit back and see Cam York just crush it out there, and him just shaking his head. It's like, all right, he's getting back at me, and I love every second of it. I want that.
Show me the effort. Show me the effort.
Me, Metal Mike saying, do we still regret giving away Bobrovsky, fellas? Yes. No. I mean, come on.
Try to get over it at some point.
I mean, it still sucks. I can't say the sting ever really truly goes away. But unfortunately, you can't change the past. The Flyers made some interesting decisions, and you just got to live with it.
And the thing is, we don't know what would have happened if he stayed here, or if we chose him to be the guy. Right. Would he have had the same success with different players in front of him, right? He could easily have been the rich, successful Biff from Back to the Future, or the schleb Biff, that catered to Barney McFly. I mean, it could have went either way. There's no way to know unless you have a DeLorean.
Right. And I mean, to be fair, if you look at the way that the things were structured at that time, it may not have turned out the best. I mean, think about it this way. Bob really didn't have much pressure on him in Columbus. I mean, Blue Jackets were kind of an afterthought of an organization when he went there. So there's no real eyeballs on you, kind of feel pretty comfy just going in there winning Vezinas. Whereas in Philly, yeah, you're under a microscope, and it's all the time.
And I mean, the other thing to think about too with Bobrovsky is you had to make a choice. You just invested $9 million a year in a goaltender. Right. Are you really going to give up on that goaltender that you just invested all that money in when you have a guy that's going to be not nearly as hard to trade away. I mean, I don't blame them for making the choice of Brizgalov. At the time, it was probably the right choice. You know, you had the proven goaltender in Ilya Brizgalov, and then you had the unknown in Sergei Bobrovsky. Nobody knew that Bob was going to be as good as he is. Nobody had that crystal ball. To Rob's point, you need a DeLorean. You know what I mean?
Right.
You need to go grab Marty McFly, and you need to go for the you got to take.
Imagine they don't
Route to
pay
88.
Briz. Yeah, right. Imagine if they don't pay Briz and he goes off and has a future Hall of Fame career in that big ginormous universe. Like, you know, like what could have been.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true. I mean, there's a lot to think about. I mean, the Flyers don't even go after him at all. Instead, they don't trade away Mike Richardson, Jeff Carter, you know, and Richardson Carter stayed in Philly.
And
Yeah.
Mike's comment is the reason why I've been saying what I've been saying the last couple of years. Let's stop giving up on this young talent. Let's keep him here. Let's stop pushing him out of town. Let's stop having these regrets and stop wondering what if. Let's make what ifs reality. Let's let these young guys develop. Let's let them play. Let's let them play. Let's see what they become. Let's hold on to them until they hit their prime years and then get rid of them if they're not working out.
Right.
Because you'll usually know by 25, 26.
Right.
If these guys can hang.
So as we're winding things down here, as we're getting closer to the end here, I did star this one just because it is talking. It's a talking point. Thoughts on Mitch Marner going to Vegas? What do you do with the Maple Leafs? For me, you, and Robbie here, for all of us. So, gentlemen, I would say the Leafs. Here's my feeling on Marner. Marner is a prima donna. He's been that way pretty much his whole career. It doesn't help anything that he was pampered from the moment he got to Toronto, even though that market can be extremely unfair. They're very unfair to Matthews all the time, even though he's the one thing keeping them alive. So the question that I have to ask you guys is, do you think Toronto actually got better with Marner leaving and going to Vegas?
I do.
I don't.
Because of the dollars and cents left over that they can invest in other areas. You know, not as is. I'm not saying this is addition by subtraction. It is for the locker room, to Maddie's point. But, I mean, ultimately, you got to replace that production, and it's not easy. But, you know, they got to take that team in a different direction. And I think it's good for Mitch Marner, right? That he signed a longer-term deal than we thought he would at this point. Pretty much, you know, making this probably his last free agent, you know, contract that I'll have to negotiate, minus like an end of career one, right? And we've seen prima donnas go to Vegas and do pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, people argued about Jack Eichel, although to be fair, Buffalo also has to share a part of that blame because they did not handle that situation well at all.
Agreed.
With Marner, I think Toronto shot themselves in the foot with this, especially with some of the rumors that were out there, apparently them blackmailing Vegas, which was multiple sourced, by the way. If he wound up signing with Vegas before the trade was done, they were going to call tampering on him. So I don't know if anybody heard that, but that was a fun story. So that kind of lowered the leverage that Toronto had, if they even had any. But I mean, with Marner, I mean, that was a town where he grew up. You know, he's from Toronto. He held such an honor in wearing that blue sweater for so long. I agree with what Robbie said, where they needed to make a change. It was time to break up the power three that they have there in Marner, Matthews, and Nylander. It was time to bring in some fresh blood. So now you free up a lot of money to kind of invest elsewhere. You're starting with Matthew Nyes with his contract extension. So that was a great deal for them. I thought it was very team friendly as well. I thought he could have probably gotten a little bit more. I do like that deal for Toronto, but as far as for Marner, he's off in a better situation. I think it's going to be less pressure on him, and it's going to be more so continue to stay on Mark Stone and Jack Eichel. I mean, there's still going to be some pressure on Marner, but I don't think he's going to be the spotlight guy. I think it's a great opportunity for him to be in a situation where it's a better built team as well. They have a goaltender that can play. They have defense that can play, and they have 4 lines that they can roll out and just punish teams. So I think he finally, has a better opportunity to finally get to the Stanley Cup final than he does in Toronto. I think Toronto still has a lot of issues they need to figure out, but I think the situation is worked out the way that it's supposed to. But I still think that trade was complete bullshit.
So let's see here. Swoopy did say Mitch Marner's pass first playmaking, adding all the assist style, is better suited to play center. Matthews, on the other hand, is better suited as a wing, being a shoot first guy. Am I the only one who thinks that?
Mm-hmm.
I know they like playing Matthews with the big body up the middle, right? It allows him to really maximize upon his creativity. So I get it, but why not do a little bit of both, where maybe you play Matthews center on his regular line assignment and then play him on the wing on the power play? But I mean, this is all kind of a mute point at this point with Marner being out of town, but that's something to consider for moving forward, at least in terms of Matthews. That's a fine point, Swoopy.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about them moving on from Marner. Like you guys have said, like, it was only a matter of time, because you just kept getting the dwindling returns at the end of the day. It's like, how many more times can you hit your head up against the brick wall until you realize we need to change things up a little bit here? And obviously, you want to keep Matthews. He's the best goal scorer in the league. And so you want to keep him. And not only that, Tavares, I will say, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with him, because I feel like sometimes the captain doesn't necessarily like to show up when he should. He sometimes likes to go MIA. So I'm a little love-hate on Tavares' part. So if you weren't going to get rid of Marner, I would almost say maybe you move on from Tavares and send him to Vegas instead. But as for this whole thing, I would say Marner going to Vegas isn't really a bad thing. For Marner, I don't think it's a bad thing. And for Toronto, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think, yes, the production's going to go down. There's no doubt about that. However, though, like everyone's been saying, money will be freed up. You can do some investment. You can take your time, do some due diligence to figure out, okay, if we can't replace Marner with a single player, we can try and figure out, okay, what's a good way for us to put something around Matthews and Tavares that may not be Marner, but could get a lot of mileage on that line with them. You don't always have to be a massive, overly productive player. You don't have to be a superstar. Sometimes a hard-working guy on a line with the superstars can sometimes make all the difference at the end of the day. I mean, look at it this way. It may not be on the same level as that, but I don't ever recall Scott Hartnell having a better season than the year he worked with Giroux and Yager. Do you guys remember him having a better year?
No.
And he was a hard-nosed guy. That was his style of play. But by God, he was productive as hell with both of them around. Maybe you throw a Scott Hartnell-like player in there with a Matthews and Tavares, and you get some big results out of that. Just saying. Just saying. It possibilities.
Yeah. I think what Toronto needs to do is figure out a way to roll out 4 solid lines and not just have 2 lines. And then obviously their defense has always been good enough. Invest in a much better goaltender too. To me, that's like their biggest faults and why they can't get out of the first round is they invest so much on top 6 and defense. Not a bad thing, but you got to fill out your role players as well. And that's kind of where I think that, they kind of fell flat on their face was you invested $10 million in Marner. I think it's like $13 million in Austin Matthews. It's like another 10 or 11 million in Nylander. Then you had $9 million in Tavares. it doesn't leave you a whole ton of money to kind of fill out the rest of the depth chart there. But I mean, with Marner gone, they can invest more into some other more depth role players, better depth role players. So I mean, we'll see what it means. But I mean, to Swoopy's comment, your position doesn't always dictate what style is going to be better for you or what position will be better for you. It's just kind of just what suits you better. You know what I mean? Like Marner plays better on the wing than he does in center. Austin Matthews plays better at center than he does on the wing. Just because one's a pass first and one's a shoot first doesn't necessarily mean that they need to swap positions. It's all about the mentality and what you're trying to do. What actions suit you as a player better? Where are your strengths versus your weaknesses? Right. Marner still pockets about 30 goals a year, so it's nothing to really shake your head at. So
no.
He still pops 90, anywhere between 95 to 107 points a year.
Right.
Again.
And that's going to be a big loss. There's no doubt about that. I mean, Toronto's going to have to really figure out, okay, where are we going to get that kind of production from? And you're not necessarily going to get it immediately in the future. But at the same time, that's not to say that you couldn't find one or two players that could make up the difference. And if those one or two players are deeper in your roster, like you were saying, Bri, maybe you find it on the third line, maybe you find it possibly, dare I even say, maybe you find a real solid fourth liner that then motivates and elevates somebody else to a higher position that's able to produce. You might actually make up the difference.
Yeah.
Maybe not exactly, but you get the production you need.
Perfect example of what you're talking about. Look at Florida. They don't have the biggest names on their third and fourth line, although their third line does have Brad Marchand. But you also have to realize like they have really good, solid depth role players that understand their role, know what their jobs are, and they do it. Right. You can't ask more than that. You know, when you run four solid lines, your teams are hard to beat.
Right.
And I think that's something Toronto does not do well.
Right. And that is a struggle for them. I mean, that's been their struggle besides the goaltending question. That's been a big issue for them. I mean, the one thing we can say about Carolina, what they do really well is they do run four lines. They may not be with the big names, but they run it and they run their defense very well. It's what they do. That's what gets them over the hump half the time. Could they be better offensively? Sure, they could be a little bit better offensively. Goaltending, though, has been their biggest issue, ironically enough. But again, it's like there are examples out there of what Toronto could do to better themselves. Heather, you have a good night, and thoughts and prayers to you with what you're going through right now. And best of luck to you as you work on what you're dealing with.
Positive vibes for sure. Easily.
Always positive vibes.
So, yeah, that will pretty much do it for us here on Flyers Talk. Was there anything else you guys wanted to throw out there before we signed off for the night?
Yeah, overall, Maddie, I wanted to get your take on the entire Flyers offseason. Starting off at the end, looking at the draft, the players that they draft, as a brief review, how would you grade them overall? How they do this offseason?
I would say this offseason right now, I would arguably say, from where they're at, B. I think it could have been bigger. Sure, could have been bigger. But I think Danny being smart enough, he resisted the temptation of going too far. Do I think he hit on everything? No, I don't think he hit on everything. Vladar is a perfect example that you brought up earlier. A little bit too much money thrown at him. But I would say a solid B. I think he hasn't done bad. At all in terms of keeping things under control,
Right.
and then nailing down York, which needed to happen, And then drafting wise, I think they did draft a need that they had to have. They had to start getting wingers because they already have so many centers as it is. And then on top of it as well, I think the trades wise, I don't think he's really done anything too out of pocket, too unworldly. And then for the depth additions, I think they're okay. I think they'll serve their purpose. But yeah, I'd say a B. I don't think he's hit on everything, but I don't think he's missed on anything massive. That I would say destroys it.
And does that grade include him passing on Higgins, right, and going with the bigger bodied winger at that point? Even though center, I think that's what you meant to say, was that center was a point of emphasis versus wing in the draft, and they addressed
yeah,
that.
my bad.
Yeah, no, but you said it reversed, but we knew what you meant, right? But yet they passed on that center to get the bigger bodied, as well as potentially higher skilled, higher leveled scorer projected in Porter Martone, and then trading those two late first round picks to move up for Nesbitt. Did that make that go up to that B, or is that part of the reason why they didn't get an A?
I would say that yeah, that definitely factored into my grading because of the fact that it's like, okay, so we know that the center's been a problem. We know that that's an issue we've needed to address. You don't go and get Higgins, but you do make up for it by going later. Sure, may not be the same as Higgins, but I understand what Danny was doing there. I get it. I can live with it. It would have been more going down to a B minus if he had decided to not address the center at all in the first round, which at least he did. So, all right, you recovered yourself. It could have been a disaster of not addressing the center at all, because that's the one thing that they've been needing to focus on that they haven't been. And I understand people complain about, oh, you don't always have to draft for need, that sometimes you go after what's best and available right then and there. And I understand that. But at the same time, there is something to be said for there's a need for a reason. And if you're not going to find it in free agency, which we know we're not unless we're going to overpay for it, then you need to go and draft it and build it and cultivate it at the end of the day. So that did factor into my grading.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And that easily could have been the way it went, right, Bri? Where if they weren't able to trade up and get that center iceman, they might have went defender there in Hensler, right? And potentially not address center ice until the early second round pick.
Yeah.
Which there were some centers that did slip out of the first round that you could have, but now you're getting a second round center versus a potential first round center. And Nesbitt looked awesome at developmental camp. And I know that's a small sample, but it goes to show that I've been preaching it for weeks, boys. Danny B's strength is his advanced scouting and the team that he's put together.
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
I agree with you. Just to touch on something real quick before Maddie finishes up that thought, I thought one of the things that he did really good this year was know who he wanted and went and gone to get it, because he knew that he wasn't going to get him at 22. He wasn't making it past 15. To be perfectly honest with you, he probably wasn't making it past 12. Nashville was on the board, had a trade offer on the board for the number 12. So Flyers had to up the ante and go get him. And I love that about him. Danny's taking the chance. He's taking some risks in the draft to go get guys. Jetlachenko looks like he's going to be able to play in the NHL this year. Nesbitt looked really good in developmental. Like Robbie said, it's small sample size, but he showed a lot of good things. He had 2 goals in the 5-on-5. He was a big reason Team Briere beat Team Jones. So. That's awesome to see. You want to see that from a guy you take in the first round, and you go up and take a little bit of a reach on a player. You want to be able to see that. Martone looked really good in the developmental camp. So, to me, I like where Briere's head's at with where this team is as far as just trying to find the pieces and putting them together.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, overall, I would say. I would argue and say that, so far Danny has been pretty damn solid so far in this offseason. I don't think he's really done anything egregious that I would disagree with. Anything that I could have had a question mark over, I think he addressed. So I would say, yeah, I think he was fine for the most part. There really isn't anything that I would complain about. I mean, the only other thing you could say is, was it too long for Cam York? You could argue that, but at the end of the day, the money's fine. So you can kind of put that one to bed. That does negate that altogether. So, yeah, there you go. That would be my opinion on it. So, obviously, the offseason isn't done. Who knows? There could be something else going down the line that could happen. I mean, you could have a deal later on down the line, or you could have a signing later on down the line. Like I said, I don't think we might be done with big moves, but there'll probably be minor things that Danny might still do as the offseason moves forward. The only big move I could see is a trade, and I don't necessarily see that happening from Danny's side. But that'll do it for this edition. Anything else you guys wanted to throw out there before we sign off for the night?
No, I thought it's been a good offseason so far. It may not have definitely been, the best, but I definitely give Danny a B plus for this offseason. Thought he drafted well. Definitely thought he handled the free agency well. He's handling the cap as well as he can right now. So I have no issues with what Danny's doing. They'll be fine. And I'll stand by what I said earlier and them being a bubble team this year for a wild card spot. I just don't think, to Roar's earlier comment was the goalies are going to keep them in the McKenna race. Gavin McKenna's a pipe dream. I don't think the Flyers have a shot at getting them. I think they're still too good of a team.
All right. So that will do it for this edition of Flyers Talk A2D. We thank everybody for joining us. We hope that everyone had a fun and safe 4th of July, and we hope that everyone continues to have a fun and safe summer out there. And yeah, like we said, the off season is not over. There's still a lot of time left in it, so who knows what the Flyers might do before it's all said and done. So far, Danny, I think, has been pretty solid. We'll see if he can keep it going as we move forward. We were brought to you by Specialized Physical Therapy, the Dr. Paul Vidal. Any aches and pains, go to specializedphysicaltherapy.com. From all of us here, if you haven't, like, subscribe, hit the bell if you enjoy what you're listening to or what you're watching. We've got not just hockey, but wrestling. We've got all the sports of football, basketball, baseball. We've got it all covered here. So check out A2D. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell so that you get notified for everything. So next week, we'll be back and we will see if any major moves were made. And we'll see what else is going around the league right now. And we'll, of course, talk about it and enjoy speaking with the fam out there. Until then, you stay safe, you stay healthy out there. From all of us here, peace and love, everyone.